Hello, everybody. This is Joe Joseph, and this is the DailySheeple.com's Daily News Brief. I want to start out with some good news from Standing Rock, North Dakota, where this weekend, thousands of veterans descended on Standing Rock to protest this pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline, that's being installed through Sioux Indian Territory. And Russia Today pointed out on the 3rd of December that up to 3,500 veterans had descended on Standing Rock. They're due there to meet with tribal elders and discuss the best way they can help in this ongoing protest, according to RT.com. And, of course, you know, you have a heavy police presence. You've seen a lot of brutality in the way that protesters have been treated in Standing Rock. And so veterans descended there to say, look, you want to burn the U.S. Constitution, you got to shoot us first. Shoot at us first. Don't shoot at these people. What did they do to you? This is huge. And it had an effect to where today it was reported, Activist Post posted an article here, amid massive protests, the Army Corp of Engineers blocks the Dakota Access Pipeline. This is a clear indication, folks, of what happens when you become engaged and you provide accountability for the people, for everybody. I know it's kind of hard to understand in terms of the effect that a few people may have. But you don't understand the power of the individual until you see a bunch of individuals get together and actually affect change. And this was a great example of that. It says, in a complete reversal of the expected, early reports say the Army Corps of Engineers have now denied the easement which would allow Energy Transfer Partners to drill and route the Dakota Access Pipeline under the Missouri River. A press release from the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe said this, quote, the Department of the Army will not approve an easement that will allow the proposed Dakota Access Pipeline to cross under Lake Oahe. Very good. The announcement comes as thousands of veterans continue to descend on Standing Rock. Those veterans, of course, joined thousands of others encamped on the banks of the Missouri near Lake Oahe, where Energy Transfer Partners, the company responsible for the construction, and in the midst of a merger with Sunoco Logistics, has continued operations at a drill pad despite stern warnings from the Army Corps of Engineers against those actions. Now, while initial reports were unclear, the statement from the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe validates the information first emerging from a Facebook video from Native American Council Elder Remy Bald Eagle, in which he was smiling broadly, and I don't blame him. He says, up until this point, the American government has failed us, but the American people have not. So I feel American today. Isn't that interesting? The government, or what the government is supposed to do, is stand up for our rights, especially when they're being trampled upon. And in this case, up until today, it was the opposite, where they were standing up for the rights of the corporation. And it was up to us, the people, to take that power back and to stand up for our own rights in defense of some of our brothers and sisters whose rights have been trampled upon in the name of corporate greed. Because, and I understand that people like affordable energy, who doesn't? But everywhere there's these pipelines, there's leaks. There's environmental damage. I mean, we can try and gloss it over all we want, but the fact remains that the Missouri River is a major source of fresh water in this country. The Keystone Access Pipeline is another pipeline that they're trying to construct that there's a lot of pressure to go forward with, and they want to run that over the Ogalla Aquifer, the largest aquifer in the United States. How much poisoning do we have to do to our water supplies? You know, fresh water is not a finite resource, yet we all depend on it. And there are many ways for us to get clean, renewable energy. The problem is getting over the corporate greed, because renewable energy should be free for everybody. The sun is free, right? And the technology out there to harness the power of the sun, to harness the power of what we call energy from the vacuum, should be free. And the problem that we have here in the United States and throughout the world is greed dictates that somebody with that technology, they've put in a lot of money, they put in a lot of time, they put in a lot of research, they want to get that money back, and rightfully so. But then they go ahead and they'll sell it off to a corporation, and corporations will take that technology, they'll either bury it or make billions and billions of dollars in the process, selling this technology at exorbitant prices to everybody out there, when in reality, some of the best things to do would be make these plans open source and put them out to the people. It is a free humanity moment when we can power houses, power automobiles, power anything we need to with free energy. Think about it. Just like, to me, it is a right that everybody has fresh water to drink. A lot of people say, no, that's not a right. Come on. Humans cannot survive without fresh water. At a minimum. At a minimum. And if we are ever going to evolve as a species, as humanity, then we have to get past this greed that continues to drive this economy. Because until we get by that, we're just going to continue to stagnate in and wallow in the darkness that has enveloped this planet. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And the government's complicit in this because, of course, they're driven by their corporate handlers that fund our non-representing representatives' campaigns. They get into office, and then they do the bidding of the people that put them there. And Zero Hedge mirrored an article by Paul Craig Roberts today. Is the U.S. government behind the fake news media attack on President-elect Trump? Look, this fake news narrative that's going on, that I've been speaking about here for a little while now, is just going to continue to go on, but I think it's falling on deaf ears, to be quite honest with you, because people see, and there's plenty of evidence to show, that the mainstream media are probably the biggest perpetrators of fake news out there. That most people that are trying to provide accountability and to make up for the lack of accountability from our mainstream media that's supposed to be the accountability, the fourth estate, do the best job they can with the resources they have to show what's actually going on. But unfortunately, because those resources are so limited, sometimes they can't get to the bottom of things, or they have to rely on mainstream media sources and other outlets to be able to put something out there. But they do so with nothing but the best intentions. Whereas the mainstream media puts it out there with nothing but the worst intentions, to deceive you or to be handmaidens of the government. Now, Paul Craig Roberts writes, Eric Zeiss has brought to our attention that U.S. intelligence officials have placed a story in BuzzFeed, a Democratic Party mouthpiece, that the Russian government used fake news to get Donald Trump elected president. Now, who are these U.S. intelligence officials who are portraying the president-elect of the United States to be a Putin stooge, a tool of Russia? Now, once in office, Trump must investigate these hostile elements in U.S. intelligence who are working to discredit the U.S. president and the American people who voted him into office. And as one reader pointed out, those who debunk conspiracy theories, that is, explanations that they don't like, now have a conspiracy theory of their own. Vladimir Putin used independent American websites to elect Trump with fake news. Only voters living in a few large coastal cities were immune to that fake news. In other words, the prostitute media has lost control over American minds to Vladimir Putin. Think about that. Now, with an opponent this powerful, neoconservatives better think a dozen times before fomenting any tension with the Kremlin. If you go to Zeiss's column and you look at the cover of Time magazine, the cover delegitimizes the presidential election, which U.S. intelligence agencies planted. Maybe this cover of Time. President Trump must have had Secret Service investigate this attack from inside the U.S. government on the U.S. president. And Congress, both houses and Senate, should immediately summon Time magazine to hearings under oath. This interference by U.S. intelligence in American political life is completely illegal. Those responsible must be discovered, indicted, convicted, and sentenced. Otherwise, fake news will displace facts as Americans are wrapped in a matrix inside a matrix. 390 opponents of the U.S. Constitution who sit in the U.S. House of Representatives just passed a bill that voids the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Listen to this. Title V of the bill establishes an interagency executive branch committee, quote, to counter active measures by the Russian Federation to exert covert influence. Russian manipulation of U.S. media, a routine practice of the U.S. government to spread information, i.e. fake news, is one of the active measures by Russia to be countered. In other words, websites that do not participate in the demonization of Russia and President Putin will be subjected to McCarthyite suspicions and accusations. Countering is an open-ended activity that easily extends to enforcement actions against suspected parties. Now, if this bill is allowed to become law, it can be used to discredit and destroy truth-tellers as agents of a foreign intelligence. In other words, the message is, if you dispute our lies, why, you are a foreign agent and subjected to arrest or elimination. This, my friends, is the state of democracy in America today. And Craig Roberts concludes, he says, more than any other country, the United States needs to be liberated. Folks, I mean, this is something that we've been battling now for a long time. And we've said it for a long time. And if you buck what the mainstream media or what the government tells you, what do? They use an ad hominem attack, call you a conspiracy theorist, call you other names, because they don't want to cede control. They want to control the information stream. It truly is an information war. And so when the American people and other people throughout the world go and take the matter into their own hands of trying to provide accurate news and information in this internet age where information can be spread instantly anywhere and at any point in the world, this is how they do it. They call you names and they use Gestapo-style police tactics to stamp it out. Only this time it's not going to work. So I wonder what they're going to do now. Over in Italy, they've got a big crisis on their hands as Matteo Renzi, his referendum got totally and completely just demolished today. So apparently he's going to have to resign as it faced, I think it was a 56.7 to 43.3% defeat. So what this was a referendum to enact constitutional reforms to kind of streamline constitutional amendment processes. And he says if it failed, he's going to resign. And so it did. And now we're waiting to see what's going to happen. Because what they say is now the no vote represents a major victory for the people, and they're going to have to elect a new government. But it also says that because of this ruling, that a lot of their major banks now are in jeopardy of failing. Whether or not that's fear tactics remain to be seen, but Italy is a very large economy over in the EU, and if that is allowed to fail, and I say allowed to fail, it should fail, because if it's not working, it should fail. Can the EU and their central bank bail it out, much like they did Greece, because Greece set a precedent? And then if they do, where's the money coming from? And are Italian pensioners and investors going to have to pay the price for these banks that have been irresponsible, that have participated in fractional reserve banking and everything else, to foot the bill to save these insolvent criminal bodies? And that's really what it is. It's criminal, folks. This is the problem today. And all of the banks throughout the world do this. And it's only a matter of time before the next country and their next banks fail. But Italy is, I think, one of the biggest governments. It's the biggest government to fail so far in the EU. So this will be something to pay attention to, certainly in the days and the weeks to come. We've also got on the Daily Sheeple a great article today that we mirrored from the anti-media, antimedia.com, that talks about how the U.S. has armed and trained both sides of the war over in Yemen. You know, we speak about this all the time, about how the military-industrial complex, remember, Eisenhower warned of this a long time ago, and he warned us to be wary and to be fearful of what would happen if the military-industrial complex gained too much power. Because what happens is they'll pay the politicians, and then the politicians will enact and do things that would not be in the best interest of the American people or the people of the world, we'll say, but it would certainly be in the interest of the corporation, the military-industrial complex. And we're seeing that in Yemen. It says here, promptly after the release of more than 500 documents from the U.S. Embassy in Yemen, WikiLeaks explained why this particular leak actually matters. Quote, the war in Yemen has produced 3.15 million internally displaced persons. Although the United States government has provided most of the bombs and is deeply involved in the conduct of the war itself, the organization argues Western news organizations are failing to do their part and do their job by seldom informing the public of America's involvement. The documents were produced and exchanged during Hillary Clinton's term as Secretary of State, as well as during the first 2 years of John Kerry's tenure. Because Yemen controls an area in the Middle East through which 11% of the world's petroleum passes each day, WikiLeaks reported in the Yemen Files opening page, Saudi Arabia's interest in the country revolves around the Arabian Sea. Now, with both Iran and the United States having signed a nuclear deal, a development that did not please the Saudis, Iran's return to the global oil market could soon become a reality. Many argue that because of Iran's close ties to neighboring countries like Syria, Saudi Arabia has a reason to fear Iran's presence as a competitor. And with the world's second largest oil reserve, the Saudi kingdom remains a strong oil provider globally. Nevertheless, its influence in the global oil markets is beginning to wane as countries like Russia up their game. So you enter Iran into the picture, and the presence of Yemen's Houthi rebels, a Shia-led, allegedly Iran-backed military militia. That's what was used to justify the Saudi involvement. And so with the opportunity to ensure Saudi-supported government rule over Yemen by ousting Shia influence from the region, the Saudis could have a greater access to the Arabian Sea from their region, and the Saudis could then have another 20% of the world's petroleum pass through the Straits of Hormuz. See, so it would give them more power with regards to the delivery systems for world oil supply. And we've seen this before. We've seen it with Iraq. We've seen it with Libya, We've seen it with Afghanistan, that it's never what they tell you it is, that there's always ulterior motives. And most often, if not always, they're money driven. In the case of Afghanistan, over $1 trillion worth of rare earth elements are in Afghanistan. Huge. Then, of course, you've got the opium trade, heavy opium cultivation over in Afghanistan. So, of course, America's interest, let's go over there. Let's take it. Why is rare earth elements so important? Well, because China owns 90% of the rare earth mines in the world. And all these rare earth elements are what power your smartphones, what power your computers, and all of our electronic gadgetry today. And if you take that away, what you going to do? And the Chinese know that. And your American government is hedging against it by doing what they do best. Go to war. Same with oil. We need oil. Got to have it. Forget the fact that the technology exists out there to provide free energy to everybody throughout the planet. See, that doesn't make the corporation money. If it doesn't make the corporation money, your politicians aren't happy. Your politicians aren't happy. Forget it. And the machine goes on and on. Folks, it's time to break out of the matrix. It's time to provide the accountability that we need and to take our world back. It's really that simple. And if we do that, I can promise you, life will get a whole lot better on this planet. I'm Joe Joseph. This was the DailySheeple.com's news brief, and I'll have one for you again tomorrow. God bless and have a great day, everybody.